Anti-personnel mines came into use during the Second World War. They were intended to stop the theft of tanks. Now, these mines were unexposed tank shells where the fuses were exposed. Now, the problems with these were that soldiers could easily spot them and take them and put them in their own landmines. So it wasn't really effective for the people who designed them. Now, the first true anti-personnel landmines came into the Cold War, and these were actually not designed for military tank purposes, but they were designed to explode under the weight of a human being. Now, sometimes different types of mines were laid together in order to confuse the enemies, like such as they would stack different types of mines on top of each other, and if one tried to defuse one type of bomb, the other landmine would explode, and thus it would make it harder for enemies to trespass into your territories. Now, landmines are used by militaries throughout the world, whether it's rebels or the actual military forces. And now the benefits for landmines are they're low cost and they're really easy to use for military purposes. Now these landmines are mainly found in Angola, Mozambique, Afghanistan, Cambodia, and Bosnia. And citizens who live here often have to worry about walking on these landmines and fearing for their lives.
There are many adverse effects for old minefields throughout the countries that were torn by war. You would think that it would just be that there are mines in the ground, and if a civilian steps on them, they die. However, there are many other kinds of effects that minefields leave behind for countries. Among the effects are environmental, economical, and of course, health and safety. The environmental impact of minefields is enormous, and many of us fail to realize what a detrimental force these old mines can have on the environment. Let's take Kuwait for an example. Although it can be a deserty place around at the summertime, the soil usually becomes fertile enough to sustain, grow, and yield plentiful amount of crops for subsistence farmers. However, during the Iraqi conflict, the Iraqi forces placed around 36% of mines during the months of August and September, because of the dry soil and sandy areas made it easier to plant. But with these mines in the ground, the soil could no longer become fertile for the following months, unable to yield crops for farmers and other people who rely on the soil. Another way these mines harm the soil is when they explode. They utterly destroy the desert crust and remove any fertile topsoil that has formed since the summer. The explosions change the chemical properties in the soil as well. The soil productivity is weakened or completely depleted. The mines may even also affect the amount of evaporation that takes place around them, disrupting the amount of precipitation received in these areas as well. Now, there are also economic impacts these mines have on countries that have old war landmines. In the areas that were filled with them, such as Kuwait, the land that they reside in cannot be farmed upon. They cannot be used to help in current economic stresses. If they were to try and farm on top of them, they risk, exploding, as well as chemical changes in the crop. Therefore, no farming, less income, decrease in crop. Also, the costs for demanding areas are increasing, which we will talk about later, because of technology, and so when the government had these new technologies, it must pay for them. Therefore, government having to spend more money on demining rather than more important issues they could be spending it on if there weren't any mines in the area. Now to the meaty topic, health and safety effects. Now, when you step on a landmine, sometimes you're killed instantly, but majority of the time, the explosions are weak enough that they are supposed to maim you, cripple you. This is usually what armies that use them want, to injure, so that it not only takes out one guy, but it has one other guy to care for him. In present day, when there is no war, it forces victims of landmine incidents to work crippled for the rest of his or her life. When children step on them, such as this young boy from Vietnam, it cripples them, leaving them paralyzed for many years, if not lifetime. The majority of these countries cannot afford or frankly even care to demine their areas. They leave it up for ordinary citizens to do the job for them, not caring if they get harmed in the process. These mines disrupt it for normal day life for the people of these war-torn countries, and because of this, we, as a group, think that the awareness of these effects is very important for the people who are fortunate to live in an area where we don't have to worry about stepping on a landmine or where our farms are growing healthy in crops. We can do something about it.
Advocacy. The act of pleading for, supporting, or recommending. Active espousal. An argument, if you will. People all over the world advocate for what they believe in. Whether it is something small or something massive, everyone has their own opinion. Princess Diana, a major advocate for the removal of landmines, encouraged the signing of the Ottawa Treaty. She also was concerned for the injuries that were being caused to children because of the landmines. In our opinion, the advocacy of mines is a big deal. It is something worth pushing.
The most important part of increasing awareness of mines and unexploded remnants of war are the steps being taken to reduce their risk. For example, there has been much legislation to provide for a safer future, one that is mine-free. In 1997, the United Nations introduced the Ottawa Treaty, also known as the International Ban on Anti-Personnel Mines. This treaty works to prevent nations from creating and using landmines in conflicts. The Ottawa Treaty was signed by 159 member states of the United Nations. 35 nations, including the United States, have not signed the treaty, opting rather for an approach towards limiting mine use on their own terms. The United States, however, has one of the world's largest stockpiles of landmines and anti-personnel munitions that can harm the environment and ruin war-torn countries' land for generations to come. Luckily, the United States and most other nations have outlawed the manufacture and export of landmines. There are roughly 10 nations left that still manufacture landmines, including China, Russia, India, Pakistan, Iran, and North Korea, among others. Companies, too, are advocating for the reduction of mine usage. MAG, or the Mines Advisory Group, is an organization working overseas to demine and increase awareness amongst locals and to combat injuries in children and women, the victims most commonly associated with landmine incidents. By taking steps such as these, governments and individuals alike are taking steps to provide a safer future for developing and war-torn nations.
But what can you do about it? I was given the opportunity to speak with Stephen Brown, former head of the Dallas Peace Center. About 10 years ago, they began a series of fundraisers to raise money to pay for landmine removal. A UN-sponsored program, Adopt a Minefield, deals with landmine removal on a large scale. Unfortunately, not everyone can participate in this effort due to large costs per minefield. One minefield from the UN can cost up to $15,000. Instead, there are smaller charities you can help. The Dallas Peace Center went through the Cambodian Mine Action Center. Stephen Brown actually had the opportunity to hand-deliver the money in Cambodia. He said that from the areas they pay to demine, a school was built, pasture land was reclaimed, and a supply road was created in a critical area of Cambodia. The greatest impact on himself, he said, was seeing landmine victims who had crafted hand-pedal bicycles out of scrap because they had lost their legs. These people of remarkable creativity and personal strength should not be forced to suffer in this way. These people have next to nothing, forced to become beggars outside Buddhist temples for their sustenance due to their injuries and loss of their land. By donating money to these charities, we can help to make the world mine-free. We may not have to deal with the impacts of mines here, but for the people of these nations, it is an everyday fact of life.